What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like, subscribe to the channel as you tune in, you check out the content. And with that being said, man, I want to speak on something that I heard, that I've been hearing for a while, right? And they've been, um, mainstream media want people to think that the rest of the world has caught up with the United States when it comes to basketball. And that's not true. It's really a big lie. They the rest of the world did not catch up with the United States when it comes to basketball. What the United States did when it comes to basketball, they watered down the NBA so the rest of the world would be able to compete. And you can tell by like the level of play that is being displayed by European basketball players in the NBA, right? It's not like what um it's not like what like basketball really in the NBA really peaked like in the 80s and the 90s. Like the 80s was the golden era. And so when you have and then when you had these guys like Giannis, the Joker and Luca, and they're saying that they have caught up with the guys in the NBA. They haven't. Even from a fan standpoint, right? When you see like how people um they're not really interested in basketball. Like today's basketball is boring, it's not entertaining, there's no strategy to it. It's just it's a bunch of dribbling, three-point shooting and layups, right? No strategy or anything. That's not what the NBA like. The NBA never used to never was like that. Basketball players back in the day were very efficient. Then you had basketball players who could play. They could play both ends. Like elite basketball players play both ends of the court. They didn't just play, just focus on scoring. Not, even if you think about a basketball player like Allen Iverson played tough defense. He was in some situations he could be a liability depending on like what matchup. If he got matched up on a switch with a bigger basketball player, then he could be a liability. But depending on where he got caught in the court, right? If he got caught in the low post, then he was a liability. If he got switched and he was on a high post, then he would make you had to put the ball on the floor because if you did, or if you did put the ball on the floor, try to go around him, then he was going to take the ball. And so basketball players were intelligent like that. They played. Everybody used their height or their lack of height to their advantage, right? Their experience, they use that to their advantage. But with the European basketball players, man, and like the Joker, they haven't caught up with the rest of the world. Like I said, the NBA was watered down so these guys could have some success, and so they could market the NBA to the rest of the world. And so that's the big lie, And the thing about it is, I don't even think I don't even think like the Joker, I don't think Giannis, and I don't think Luka even know that they are not like they're not the best that the world has to offer. I think that they're believing in all the hype. Even like LeBron James believe he's the GOAT, but that's a whole nother conversation. But these guys right here, they probably believe the hype. They believe like they are the best that the world has to offer as far as basketball. And that's not true. They're playing in a league where it's definitely easier to score. And like I said, you don't have to, the league is not physical. You don't have to protect the ball like they did back in the day. It's just a whole different animal than what, like I said, 80s and 90s basketball, the golden era of basketball used to be. And these guys don't know that. They're playing like we have arrived. They see themselves as like, yeah, we have arrived. We've caught up with the rest of the world, right? Um, that's not true. The NBA, you know, I mean, they're just not seeing the best that the NBA. These guys right here not seeing the best that the NBA has to offer. And that's not to say that if Like if the Joker had a play in the 80s, or if Giannis or Luca had a play in the 80s, I think they would have made it. I think they would have made it in the league, but their roles would be so much different because they going up against a different type of competition. You're going up against power forwards and centers. That would make all of their games um, that would make all of their games different. And you're playing against power forwards and centers. Then you're going to be playing against point guards who know how to play the game. So you're talking about three different positions, and it was just so much. Their games would be so much different. It's like a lot of the things they do now, they wouldn't be able to do that. So, in my opinion, you can't consider yourself the best unless you beat the best. And that's one thing that Michael Jordan said about like that GOAT conversation. Like he said he couldn't in good conscience, he couldn't call himself the GOAT because he never got to compete against Jerry West. He never got to play against what's Oscar Robertson or any of those guys, right? So he said he couldn't really call himself the GOAT. And the more I think about that, like the more I respect that frame of mind, because when I look at these European basketball players, they didn't get to play against like Shaq. That is, like, and I bring up Shaq, man, because I watched a lot of basketball, and I never seen nobody as dominant as Shaq. Like, what do you do with somebody he could just dunk it on like he could dunk it every time down the court. Like when Shaq was at his peak in the early 2000s, when Shaq was at his peak, it was just nobody on the planet. And that's not an exaggeration. It was like nobody on the planet who could deal with Shaq, when he was at his peak, man. And so these guys didn't get to compete against Shaq. They didn't get to compete against Hakeem Olajuwon. They didn't get to compete against Patrick Ewing. None of the greats, none of the great centers, power forwards, and none of that. So, and I said this in other videos, it didn't need to be a cutoff. Like I said, once Kobe retired, and what he retired, was it 14? I think, don't quote me. I think Kobe retired in 2014. But whenever he retired, that's where they should draw the line. Like once Kobe left the league, once Tim Duncan left the league, like those were the last of the great Mohicans, right? You know, Kobe got to see Mike. Tim Duncan got to see Mike, and Mike got to see Magic and Bird. Bird got to see, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and it was some connection between like George Gervin and Dr. J. All those guys experienced each other, right? Seen each other play. These guys right here, like once you get past Kobe, these guys like don't have any really connection to that golden era of basketball. So like it's just different. It's different. I wouldn't compare anybody. Like they need all the stats that Kareem had, all the stats that Magic had, John Stockton. They shouldn't put these guys up there with like those guys like that. They shouldn't compare them because a whole different it's just a whole different ball game. You talking about a European style of basketball with no center, no power forward, and a point guard position is just different. These, it's just different. Um, and so, like I said, but my whole point about this video is just to let everybody know that the rest of the world still has not caught up with the American basketball, like American basketball players. The NBA was watered down so these guys could come and play in the league, and so they could have, they can market this game around the world. You know, Europe would not be as interested in the NBA if they didn't have somebody, to represent them in the NBA. If it wasn't for the Joker, if it wasn't for Luka having success in the NBA, then there would be a lot of money lost. Like if Giannis wasn't having success in the NBA, then the NBA wouldn't be generating the type of income that they generate from those overseas markets. So that's what it's all about. It's all about the money, but it's not about the skill, and so yeah, let the game benefit them. Cater the game to the European basketball player, but the world has never caught up with us as far as basketball. That's just like me going over to Kenya and winning like a marathon or something, right? Everybody know that the Kenyans dominate, marathons. When you had a Boston Marathon or the New York Marathon, most of the time somebody from Kenya either win it or they come in like the top two or three, right? But let an American go over to Kenya and start winning those marathons, those people over there be up in arms. They were like, well, hold up, man. What you bending the rules so the Americans can come over here and have some success? They will, they'll lose their mind. So, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing. That's my point about this with basketball. They did not catch, the NBA changed so these guys could so they could have some success. And I will push back on anybody who try to who try to say different. It's just a whole different league. So yeah, that's my take on it, man. That's my rant about this the big lie that the NBA is telling, American fan. And anybody who watched basketball in the 80s and in the 90s and up until, like I said, when Kobe and Tim Duncan retired, anybody who watched the NBA knows that it's a whole different era. It's a whole different style of basketball playing. So that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a comment. And with that being said, man, I'm gonna check y'all out in the next video. Peace.